I watched through my kitchen window as the HOA president, Patricia Hendricks, marched up my front porch steps with the kind of determination usually reserved for military invasions, and I knew my Tuesday morning was about to go sideways. The January ice storm had hit our Columbus, Ohio neighborhood hard overnight, leaving everything coated in a thick layer of treacherous glass like ice that made even standing still feel like a death wish. I had just finished my coffee when I saw her bend down and pick up my brand new ice cleats from where I'd left them by the front door, tucking them under her puffy North Face jacket like she was smuggling contraband. My name is Xavier Donovan, and I'd lived in the Maple Ridge subdivision for exactly 8 months. I'd bought my 3-bedroom colonial as a fresh start after my divorce, thinking a quiet neighborhood would be perfect for getting my life back on track. What the real estate agent failed to mention was that Patricia ran the HOA like it was her personal fiefdom, complete with arbitrary rules that seemed to change based on her mood, and a vendetta against anyone who dared to question her authority. I practically sprinted to my front door, yanking it open just in time to see Patricia's BMW SUV backing out of my driveway. The ice cleats I'd ordered specifically for this kind of weather, the ones that cost me $75 on Amazon and had just arrived yesterday, were gone. I stood there in my thermal socks on the freezing porch, watching her tail lights disappear around the corner, absolutely dumbfounded by the audacity. The thing about Patricia was that she'd been making my life difficult since the day I moved in. First, it was a violation notice because my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Then it was another notice because I'd put my trash cans out at 6:50 in the morning instead of 7. Last month, she tried to fine me $200 because my Christmas lights were still up on December 27th, claiming the HOA bylaws stated all holiday decorations must be removed by December 26th. I'd actually read the bylaws cover to cover after that one, and nowhere did it mention any such rule. I grabbed my phone and pulled up her number, my fingers fumbling on the cold screen. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Xavier, what can I do for you?" "You can return my ice cleats," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I just watched you take them from my porch." "Oh, those?" She laughed, actually laughed. "Those are HOA property. You can't just leave personal items visible from the street. It's a violation of our aesthetic standards policy." I counted to 5 in my head, breathing through my nose. "Patricia, those are my personal property. They're ice cleats. I need them to walk safely in this weather. You can't just take someone's belongings." According to Section 7.3 of the HOA bylaws, any items left in view of the street that detract from neighborhood cohesion can be confiscated by the board. I'm doing my duty as president. "That section is about abandoned furniture and trash," I said. "Not winter safety equipment someone is actively using. I'll bring this up at the next board meeting. In the meantime, the cleats will remain in my possession." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there staring at my phone, rage bubbling up in my chest. This woman had finally crossed a line from annoying to criminal. Taking someone's property off their porch wasn't HOA business, it was theft. I thought about calling the police right then, but decided to give it an hour. Maybe Patricia would come to her senses and return them once she realized how insane her justification was. I spent the next hour working from my home office, trying to focus on the marketing reports I needed to finish for my job at a local tech company. But I kept glancing out the window at the ice-covered street, watching neighbors slip and slide their way to their cars. Around 10:30, my doorbell rang. It was my next-door neighbor, Margaret Chen, bundled up in a parka and looking concerned. Xavier, did you hear what happened to Patricia? No, what? She fell on her driveway. 3 times, apparently. Janet across the street saw the whole thing. Patricia was trying to get to her mailbox and just kept going down. Janet said it would have been funny if it hadn't looked so painful. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and concern. Is she okay? Janet helped her inside. Patricia was screaming about suing the city for not salting the roads properly. She was limping pretty badly. Margaret paused, giving me a knowing look. Janet also mentioned she saw Patricia at your house earlier, said she took something from your porch. My ice cleats, I confirmed. Brand new ones. She claimed they were an HOA violation. Margaret rolled her eyes. That woman is unbelievable. You know she tried to fine me last year because my roses were too tall, said they violated the height restrictions for landscaping. I had to get a lawyer to send her a letter before she backed off. After Margaret left, I decided to take a walk down to Patricia's house. The streets were still treacherous, but I dug out my old hiking boots with decent tread. Every step was careful and calculated, my arms out for balance. The whole neighborhood looked like a skating rink. Patricia lived in the biggest house on the block, a sprawling 5-bedroom McMansion with professionally maintained landscaping and a 3-car garage. I could see her through the front window, sitting on her couch with her leg propped up on an ottoman, holding an ice pack to what looked like her knee. I rang the doorbell. She opened the door with visible effort, leaning heavily on the door frame. Her face was red and splotchy, and I could see she'd been crying. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her. "What do you want?" she snapped. "I want my ice cleats back. I heard you fell." "I'm sorry that happened, but maybe if you hadn't stolen my safety equipment, you would have been wearing them yourself." "I didn't steal anything. I confiscated non-compliant items." "Patricia, let's be real for a second. You took my property without permission. That's theft." "I can call the Columbus police right now and file a report, or you can give me back my cleats and we can pretend this never happened." Her eyes narrowed. "You wouldn't dare. I'm the HOA president. I have every right to enforce our community standards." "Then show me in writing where it says you can take ice cleats from someone's porch. Show me the exact bylaw." She crossed her arms, wincing at the movement. "Section 7.3. That's about abandoned property and trash. Ice cleats that have been on my porch for less than 24 hours aren't abandoned. They're being stored temporarily by their owner. You know this is ridiculous." "Get off my property," she said, starting to close the door. I stuck my foot in the doorway, immediately regretting it as pain shot through my toes. "Give me back my cleats, Patricia. Last chance before I call the police." "Call them then. I'll tell them you're harassing me." "I'm injured because of the city's negligence, and here you are, a man, intimidating an injured woman in her own home. How do you think that's going to look?" She slammed the door in my face, or tried to. My boot was still in the way. We stood there for a second in a bizarre standoff before I finally pulled my foot back and heard the lock click. I walked back home, pulled out my phone, and called the Columbus police non-emergency line. The dispatcher listened to my story with what sounded like barely suppressed amusement. "So let me get this straight," she said. "Your HOA president took your ice cleats and then fell 3 times trying to walk on ice without them. That's exactly what happened. And you want to file a theft report?" "Yes. She took my property without permission. That's theft." The dispatcher sighed. "Okay, I'll send an officer over to take a report. Might be a while, though. We've got accidents all over the city because of this ice storm." It took 2 hours for Officer Brandon Mills to show up at my door. He was a young guy, probably late 20s, with a tired expression that said he'd already dealt with more than his share of weather-related chaos today. "You're the ice cleat theft," he asked, and I couldn't tell if he was joking or not. "That's me," I said, inviting him inside. I explained the whole situation while he took notes. I showed him the Amazon receipt for the cleats, the texts I'd exchanged with Patricia after she'd taken them, and the emails she'd sent me over the past months documenting her pattern of harassment. "She's been on your case since you moved in, huh?" Officer Mills said, scrolling through the emails on my laptop. "Every single month there's been something. Wrong shade of paint, trash cans out 10 minutes early, Christmas lights up one day too late. None of it has been legitimate. I've read the bylaws. She's either making things up or wildly misinterpreting the rules. And now she's taken your property." "Exactly." Officer Mills stood up, tucking his notepad into his pocket. "Let me go talk to her." Technically, yes, taking items from someone's property without permission is theft. But given the HOA angle, this might be more of a civil matter. Still, I'll see if I can convince her to return them. I watched from my window as Officer Mills made the careful journey down the icy street to Patricia's house. He was inside for about 15 minutes before emerging, shaking his head. He trudged back to my house and knocked again. "She's refusing to return them," he said. "Claims she has the authority as HOA president to confiscate items that violate community standards." I explained that's not how property law works, but she's adamant. She also showed me her injuries from the falls and started talking about suing the city, the county, and possibly you for harassment. "Me, I'm the victim here, I know. Look, here's what I can do. I'll file the theft report. You'll get a case number. With that, you can take her to small claims court. Given that she's admitted she has your property and is refusing to return it, you've got a pretty solid case. You might also want to consult with a lawyer about the harassment angle, especially if she's been abusing her HOA authority." After Officer Mills left, I sat at my kitchen table feeling frustrated and vindicated at the same time. I had a police report documenting Patricia's theft, which felt like progress. But I still didn't have my cleats back, and the ice wasn't going to melt anytime soon. The weather forecast showed temperatures staying below freezing for at least the next week. I called my friend Derek, who was a paralegal at a law firm downtown. "Man, you need to document everything," he said after I explained the situation. "Every interaction, every email, every text. If she's been harassing you through her HOA position, there might be grounds for a lawsuit beyond just the theft. Some states have laws against HOA abuse of power. Ohio has those. I'd have to check. But I know our firm has handled cases like this before. Let me talk to one of our attorneys tomorrow and see if anyone wants to take this on. In the meantime, keep that police report safe. That's gold." That evening, I got a call from Janet Kowalski, the neighbor who'd witnessed Patricia's falls. "Xavier, I heard you filed a police report. Good for you. That woman has terrorized this neighborhood for 5 years. Someone needed to finally stand up to her." "I just want my cleats back," I said. "It's more than that now, though, isn't it? She assaulted you in your home." "She didn't assault me. She stole from you. That's a crime. And now she's facing consequences and she hates it." Janet paused. "Look, I recorded the whole thing this morning. Patricia taking your cleats, then falling 3 times trying to get to her mailbox. I was filming the ice storm for my grandson and I caught everything. Do you want me to send it to you?" I definitely wanted that video. Janet texted it over 5 minutes later and I watched it 3 times, my mouth hanging open. The footage was crystal clear. Patricia's white BMW pulling into my driveway at 8:47 a.m. Patricia walking up to my porch with careful steps, bending down, looking around furtively, and then tucking my bright orange ice cleats under her jacket. Her driving away. Then, Timestamp showing about 20 minutes later, Patricia emerging from her own house in different clothes, attempting to walk to her mailbox at the end of her driveway. The first fall happened almost immediately, her feet sliding out from under her like she'd stepped on a banana peel. She got up, tried again, and went down even harder the second time. The third fall was almost comedic, her arms windmilling as she crashed down onto her side. The video was damning. It showed clear theft followed by immediate karma. I saved it to 3 different locations and emailed a copy to myself. The next morning, I received a certified letter from Patricia's lawyer. My stomach dropped as I opened it. The letter demanded I cease all harassment of Patricia Hendricks immediately, threatened a restraining order if I contacted her again, and notified me of Patricia's intent to fine me $500 for the violation of leaving unsightly items on my porch. The letter also mentioned that Patricia was exploring legal action against me for emotional distress caused by my aggressive behavior at her home. I immediately called Derek. She lawyered up. "Read me the letter," he said. I did, and I could hear him typing in the background. "Okay, this is actually good news." "How is this good news?" "She's threatening to sue me because she's escalating, which means she knows she's in trouble. Her lawyer probably told her that taking your property was a bad move, so now they're trying to flip the script. You need to get your own lawyer. I'll have someone from our firm call you today." That afternoon, I had a consultation with Heather Vaughn, an attorney who specialized in HOA disputes and property law. She was sharp, professional, and after reviewing all my documentation, she was genuinely angry. "This is textbook HOA abuse," Heather said, pulling up the bylaws on her laptop. "Patricia Hendricks has been violating her fiduciary duty as HOA president. She's weaponizing her position to harass you specifically, and now she's stolen your property. The fact that she fell 3 times after taking your ice cleats is just irony, but the theft itself is actionable both criminally and civilly." "Her lawyer sent me this," I said, sliding the letter across her desk. Heather read it, her expression darkening. "This is intimidation. They're hoping you'll back down. We're not going to do that. I'm going to draft a response that makes it very clear you have documentation of the theft, including video evidence and a police report. We'll also demand the immediate return of your property and put her on notice that if she continues this harassment, we'll file a lawsuit for HOA abuse, theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. How much is this going to cost me? Initial retainer is $2,000. But honestly, I think we can get her to back down once she realizes we're serious. And if this goes to court, you've got such a strong case that we'll likely recover attorney fees. Plus, you could countersue for all the harassment she's put you through." I signed the retainer agreement. $2,000 was a lot of money, but my pride and my property rights were worth it. I was done being pushed around by Patricia Hendricks. Heather's letter went out the next day via certified mail and email. It was 5 pages of legal citations and very polite threats. The key paragraph stated, "Our client has video evidence clearly showing Miss Hendricks removing his property from his porch without permission. This constitutes theft under Ohio Revised Code Section 2913.02. Additionally, Miss Hendricks has engaged in a pattern of harassment and abuse of her authority as HOA president. If the ice cleats are not returned within 48 hours and all threatened fines are not withdrawn, we will file suit in Franklin County Court of Common Pleas for theft, conversion, abuse of process, and intentional infliction of emotional distress." The response came faster than I expected. Patricia's lawyer called Heather's office the same day the letter was delivered. According to Heather, The conversation was tense. Patricia's attorney had apparently not been fully briefed on the situation and was unhappy to learn about the video evidence. They requested a meeting to resolve this matter amicably. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday at Heather's office. In the meantime, I kept my head down and documented everything. I took photos of my porch every day, time-stamped. I kept a log of every time I saw Patricia drive by my house, which was frequently. On Thursday, I received another HOA violation notice in my mailbox, this one claiming my garage door was left open for more than 30 minutes in violation of neighborhood standards. The problem was, I'd been at my office downtown all day. My garage door hadn't been open at all. I pulled up my home security camera footage and confirmed it. The garage door had been closed the entire day. Patricia was making things up now, probably trying to build a case that I was a problem resident. I forwarded all of this to Heather, who added it to our growing file. Monday arrived with warmer temperatures finally melting some of the ice. I met Heather at her office at 2 p.m. Patricia arrived with her attorney, Douglas Chen, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. We all sat down in Heather's conference room, the tension thick enough to cut. Patricia looked terrible. Her knee was clearly still bothering her, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Part of me felt sympathy. Most of me remembered she'd stolen my property and had been making my life miserable for months. Douglas started the meeting. My client is willing to return the ice cleats in exchange for Mr. Donovan dropping all claims and agreeing not to disparage Miss Hendricks or interfere with her duties as HOA president. Heather didn't miss a beat. That's not acceptable. Your client stole my client's property, filed false violation reports, and has engaged in a months-long campaign of harassment. Returning stolen property is not a negotiating chip. It's the baseline expectation. Here's what we're proposing. Miss Hendricks returns the ice cleats today, issues a written apology, withdraws all pending and threatened fines, and resigns from the HOA board. In exchange, Mr. Donovan will not pursue criminal charges and will limit his civil claims to a nominal amount for his attorney fees. Patricia's face went red. I'm not resigning. I've been president for 6 years. I've dedicated countless hours to this neighborhood. You've abused your position, Heather said calmly. We have documentation of at least 8 violations notices issued to Mr. Donovan in 8 months, none of which were legitimate under the actual HOA bylaws. We have video of you stealing his property. We have a police report. If this goes to court, you will lose and you'll be personally liable for damages. Your HOA insurance won't cover this because you were acting outside the scope of your authority. Douglas held up a hand. Can we have a moment alone with our client? Heather and I stepped out into the hallway. How do you think it's going? I asked. She's cornered, Heather said. Her lawyer knows it. The question is whether her pride will let her accept reality. After 10 minutes, we were called back in. Patricia looked like she'd been crying. Douglas cleared his throat. Miss Hendricks will return the ice cleats today and withdraw all pending fines. However, she maintains she acted in good faith as HOA president and will not apologize or resign. Not good enough, Heather said. The resignation is non-negotiable. She's proven she can't be trusted in a position of authority. The HOA board members are elected by the community, Douglas argued. You can't force her to resign. We can if she wants to avoid a lawsuit that will cost her tens of thousands in legal fees and damages, Heather countered. Mr. Donovan has been more than patient. He's offered a very generous resolution. Take it or we'll see you in court. Patricia stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Fine, I'll resign, But this is ridiculous. I was trying to maintain standards in our neighborhood. Someone has to care about property values. Maintaining standards doesn't include theft, I said, speaking for the first time since the meeting started. It doesn't include making up violations that don't exist in the bylaws. You weren't maintaining anything except your own power trip. Her eyes flashed with anger, but Douglas put a hand on her arm. We accept the terms. Patricia will resign from the HOA board effective immediately, return the property, and withdraw all fines. In exchange, Mr. Donovan will not pursue criminal or civil action beyond recovery of reasonable attorney fees, which we'll agree to cap at $2,000. Heather looked at me. I nodded. Agreed. We spent the next hour drafting and signing a settlement agreement. Patricia had to call her husband to bring the ice cleats to the office, which was humiliating for her but satisfying for me. When Brad Hendricks showed up with my orange cleats in a plastic bag, looking confused and embarrassed, I almost felt bad. Almost. I examined the cleats. They were undamaged, still in perfect condition. I looked at Patricia. You could have just asked to borrow them, after you fell the first time. She looked away, her jaw clenched. The settlement was finalized by 4:30 p.m. Patricia signed a resignation letter addressed to the HOA board. She also signed an agreement to pay my attorney fees and to never contact me directly again unless it was official HOA business approved by the board, and even then, only in writing. In exchange, I signed away my right to pursue further legal action related to the ice cleat incident. As we left the office, Heather pulled me aside. You should attend the next HOA meeting. Make sure they accept her resignation and elect someone sane to replace her. The HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at the community center. I'd never attended one before, having avoided them specifically because of Patricia. But this time, I showed up at 7 p.m. sharp with my copy of the settlement agreement in hand. The meeting room was packed. Apparently, word had spread that Patricia was resigning, and people were curious. I recognized most of my neighbors, including Margaret Chen and Janet Kowalski, who waved me over to sit with them. Patricia wasn't there. Instead, the vice president, Robert Morrison, ran the meeting. He was a retired accountant in his 70s who seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the attention. As you may have heard, Robert began, Patricia Hendricks has resigned as HOA president effective immediately. The board has accepted her resignation. We'll be holding an election for a new president at next month's meeting. In the meantime, I'll be serving as acting president. Someone in the back raised their hand. Can you tell us why she resigned? Robert looked uncomfortable. That's a private matter between Patricia and the board. Janet stood up. I can tell you why. She stole Xavier Donovan's ice cleats from his porch, fell 3 times trying to walk without them, and then tried to use her HOA position to cover it up. Xavier had to hire a lawyer and threaten criminal charges before she'd return them. The room erupted in murmurs. Robert tried to regain control. That's not entirely accurate. It's completely accurate, I said, standing up. I have the police report and the settlement agreement right here. Patricia has been abusing her position as president for months, maybe years. She's been filing false violation reports and using her authority to harass residents she doesn't like. It needs to stop. Margaret stood up next. Xavier's not the only one. She tried to fine me for tall roses. She threatened the Johnsons with daily fines because their daughter parked on the street instead of the driveway. She sent the Patels a violation notice because their front door was burgundy instead of red. The woman has been a nightmare. More people started sharing their stories. It turned out Patricia had been terrorizing the neighborhood for years, and everyone had just accepted it as the price of living in Maple Ridge. The meeting turned into an impromptu therapy session, with residents venting their frustrations and horror stories. Robert finally managed to quiet everyone down. Clearly, there have been some issues with how violations have been handled. As acting president, I want to commit to reviewing all pending violations and making sure we're actually following our bylaws as written, not as interpreted. I also propose we form a committee to review the bylaws themselves and recommend any changes or clarifications. The motion passed unanimously. After the meeting, several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Patricia. "Someone needed to do it," said Tom Patel, a software engineer who lived 3 doors down. "She's been fining us twice a month for stupid things. Our lawyer said we could fight it, but it seemed easier to just pay and repaint our door." "You should request a refund," I suggested. "If the violations weren't legitimate, you shouldn't have paid them." Tom's eyes lit up. "Can we do that?" "I don't know, but it's worth exploring." That conversation sparked a chain reaction. Over the next few weeks, at least a dozen families in Maple Ridge requested refunds for what they believed were improper fines issued during Patricia's tenure. The HOA board, now chaired by Robert, hired an independent attorney to review 3 years of violation notices and fines. The attorney's report, issued 6 weeks later, was damning. Of the 247 violations issued during Patricia's time as president, 183 were either completely fabricated or wildly misinterpreted from the actual bylaws. The board approved refunds totaling over $40,000. Patricia and Brad ended up putting their house on the market in March. The gossip network reported that Patricia couldn't handle seeing all the neighbors who now knew what she'd done. I saw the moving truck outside their house on a Saturday morning in April, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. She'd brought this on herself, but it still seemed like a harsh ending. My ice cleats sat by my front door for the rest of the winter, and I used them regularly. Every time I put them on, I thought about the absurdity of the whole situation. A grown woman had stolen safety equipment because of a power trip, injured herself because she didn't have that same equipment, and then tried to use her authority to justify the theft. It was almost too ridiculous to believe, except it had really happened. The new HOA president, elected in March, was a woman named Susan Martinez, a school teacher who ran on a platform of common sense and community. Her first act was to issue a formal apology to all residents who had been unfairly targeted during Patricia's presidency. Her second act was to implement a new policy requiring all violation notices to cite specific bylaw sections, and to give residents 30 days to respond before any fines were assessed. Life in Maple Ridge improved dramatically. The neighborhood Facebook group, which had been a source of constant drama and arguments during Patricia's tenure, became actually useful for things like organizing block parties and sharing recommendations for contractors. People started talking to each other again, instead of living in fear of being reported for minor infractions. I settled into my house and my post-divorce life. The whole ordeal with Patricia had been stressful and expensive, but in a weird way, it had helped me move forward. Standing up to her had reminded me that I didn't have to accept being pushed around, whether by an ex-wife or an HOA president or anyone else. In June, I was working in my garden, planting tomatoes, when Janet walked over with a pitcher of lemonade. "Thought you might be thirsty," she said. "Thanks," I said, accepting a glass. "How's the neighborhood gossip mill these days?" she laughed. "Quiet, actually. It's weird. We have boring normal problems now, like whose dog keeps getting loose and whether we should repave the streets, Remember when we had real drama?" "I'm happy with boring," I said. "Me too," she paused. "You know, you did a good thing, taking on Patricia. A lot of people were too scared. I just wanted my ice cleats back. It was more than that. You stood up for all of us." After she left, I sat on my porch with my lemonade and looked at the peaceful suburban street. The trees were full and green, kids were riding bikes, someone was grilling in their backyard. This was what I'd wanted when I bought the house. A quiet, normal life. The ice cleats were tucked away in my closet now, waiting for next winter. I hoped I'd never have another story to tell about them, but if I did, at least I knew I could handle it. Summer turned into fall and fall into winter again. When the first ice storm of the new season hit in late November, I pulled out my cleats and strapped them on before heading out to scrape my car. As I walked carefully across my driveway, I thought about Patricia and her 3 falls. I wondered if she thought about those falls too, if she'd learned anything from the whole experience. The neighborhood had a light dusting of snow for Christmas, and someone organized a decorating contest. I hung lights on my porch and put a wreath on my door, leaving them up until January 2nd without fear of violation notices or fines. It was a small freedom, but it meant something. In late January, almost exactly 1 year after the ice cleat incident, I got an email from Heather Vaughn. "Just wanted to check in and see how things are going in Maple Ridge. No more HOA drama, I hope," I wrote back. "All quiet on the Western Front. New president is great. Thanks again for your help." Her response came quickly. "Anytime. Though I hope there won't be a next time." That was one of the stranger cases I've worked on. Strange was definitely the right word for it. The whole situation had been bizarre from start to finish. But it had also been a valuable lesson about standing up for yourself, about not letting people abuse authority, and about the importance of documentation when dealing with unreasonable people. I never saw Patricia again after the moving truck left. Brad, her husband, I bumped into once at the grocery store. He looked embarrassed and quickly turned down another aisle to avoid me. I didn't chase him. There was nothing to say. The house Patricia and Brad had lived in was bought by a young couple with twin toddlers. They were friendly and normal and didn't seem interested in anyone else's business, which made them perfect neighbors. The husband, James, asked me about the neighborhood when they moved in. "It's great," I told him honestly. "Good people, well-run HOA, no drama." "That's what we were hoping for," he said. I almost told him about Patricia and the ice cleats, but decided against it. That story was in the past, and there was no reason to resurrect it for new residents who had nothing to do with it. But I did tell the story at a party that spring, when a friend from work was complaining about his own HOA troubles. Everyone gathered around as I recounted the whole absurd sequence of events, from watching Patricia steal my cleats through the window to her falling 3 times on her own driveway to the settlement meeting where she finally resigned. "You're making that up," someone said. "I swear it's true. I have the video and everything." My friend who'd been complaining about his HOA looked at me with new respect. "And you actually got her to resign?" "With a good lawyer's help, yes. Maybe I need to get a lawyer. If your HOA is genuinely abusing their authority, then yes, you should. People need to stop accepting that HOA boards can do whatever they want. They have rules too, and they need to follow them." The conversation moved on to other topics, but later that night, my friend pulled me aside. "Seriously, thank you for sharing that story. I've been letting my HOA push me around because I thought there was nothing I could do. But you're right. They have to follow the rules too. Just document everything," I advised. "Every interaction, every violation notice, every fine. If it goes legal, that documentation will be crucial." 6 months later, he sent me a text. Took your advice. Hired a lawyer, fought back against my HOA. They backed down and withdrew the fine. Thank you. That text made me smile. Maybe some good had come from the whole ice cleat debacle after all. If nothing else, it had taught me and apparently others that fighting back against abusive authority was possible and sometimes necessary. As I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sun set over Maple Ridge, I thought about how much had changed in 18 months. I'd gone from a freshly divorced man trying to start over in a new house with an adversarial HOA president making my life miserable, to someone settled and content in a peaceful neighborhood with a functional community organization. The ice cleats were still in my closet, waiting for winter. They'd become something of a trophy, a reminder of the time I'd stood up for myself and won. Every time I saw them, I remembered Patricia's face in that conference room when she realized she'd have to resign, the weight of her own actions finally catching up to her. I didn't take pleasure in her humiliation, not really. But I did take pride in the fact that I hadn't backed down, that I'd fought for what was right even when it would have been easier to just let it go and buy new cleats. The neighborhood continued to thrive under Susan Martinez's leadership. She organized quarterly meetings where residents could voice concerns and suggestions. She implemented a transparent violation notice system where every notice was reviewed by the full board before being issued. She even created a neighborhood newsletter that highlighted community events and recognized residents for positive contributions. It was everything an HOA should be, and nothing like what Patricia had created. One evening in late fall, almost 2 years after the incident, I was raking leaves in my front yard when a car pulled up. A woman I didn't recognize rolled down her window. "Excuse me, are you Xavier Donovan?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "I'm Linda Parker. I'm buying a house 2 streets over, and during the home inspection process, I asked around about the HOA. Your name came up. Multiple people told me you had some kind of issue with the previous president." I leaned on my rake. "That's ancient history now. The current HOA board is excellent." "That's what everyone said. But I'm curious what happened before, if you don't mind sharing." I gave her the abbreviated version, hitting the main points without dwelling on the details. She listened with wide eyes, and she actually fell 3 times after stealing your ice cleats. "Yes. My neighbor caught it on video." Linda laughed. "That's like instant karma." It really was. "Well, thank you for standing up to her. Sounds like she needed it. I feel better about buying here knowing the HOA situation has been resolved." After she drove away, I went back to raking, thinking about how the story had taken on a life of its own in the neighborhood. I'd become the guy who stood up to Patricia Hendricks, which was flattering but also a little embarrassing. I hadn't set out to be a neighborhood hero. I just wanted my property back. But the reality was that by standing up for myself, I'd inadvertently stood up for everyone Patricia had been bullying. The refunds, the reformed HOA policies, the new leadership, none of that would have happened if I just let her keep the cleats and written off the $75. As winter approached again, I pulled out my ice cleats and examined them. They were worn now, the rubber studs showing signs of use from 2 seasons of winter walks. They'd served their purpose many times over, keeping me safe on icy driveways and sidewalks, but their greater purpose, I realized, had been served the day Patricia took them. Those $75 ice cleats had been the catalyst for real change in Maple Ridge, exposing an abusive HOA president and leading to reforms that benefited everyone. The first snowfall came in early December. I strapped on my cleats and walked to the mailbox, my feet secure on the slippery ground. The neighborhood looked beautiful, covered in white, peaceful and quiet. I thought about Patricia somewhere out there, in whatever new neighborhood she and Brad had moved to. I hoped she'd learned something from what happened. I hoped she wasn't making some other homeowner's life miserable. But mostly, I hoped she'd gotten her own pair of ice cleats. Life continued its steady rhythm in Maple Ridge. Seasons changed, neighbors came and went, and the HOA functioned the way it was supposed to, as a tool for maintaining the community, not as a weapon for one person's power trips. My ice cleats remained by my front door throughout winter, a quiet testament to the importance of standing up for yourself. They were just rubber and metal, designed to grip ice and prevent falls. But they'd become something more in my mind, a symbol of resistance against petty tyranny, proof that one person standing firm could make a difference. I never did find out what happened to Patricia after she moved away. The neighborhood gossip network tried to track her down for a while, curious about where she'd ended up, but eventually, everyone lost interest. She became just another cautionary tale, a story told at block parties and newcomer welcome meetings. This is a great neighborhood now, people would say. But it wasn't always. Let me tell you about the previous HOA president and the ice cleats. And the story would be told again, each time with slight variations, but always with the same core truth. Someone had abused their authority, faced consequences, and the community had been better for it. As spring returned and I packed away the ice cleats for another season, I reflected on how a simple theft had spiraled into a neighborhood revolution. It hadn't been planned or coordinated. It had just been one person saying enough is enough and refusing to be pushed around anymore. The lessons I learned from that winter stayed with me. Stand up for yourself. Document everything. Don't accept abuse from people in authority. Fight back when you need to. And sometimes, karma works faster than you expect. Years later, when people ask me about the craziest thing that ever happened to me, I tell them about the ice cleats. About watching Patricia take them from my porch, about her falling 3 times without them, about the legal battle and the settlement and the neighborhood transformation that followed. Over ice cleats. They always ask, incredulous. Over principle, I correct them. The ice cleats were just the final straw. And they were. They were the moment when Patricia's reign of petty tyranny finally went too far, the moment when I decided I'd had enough, the moment that changed everything. My $75 ice cleats had been worth every penny, not for keeping me safe on winter ice, but for giving me the courage to stand up and demand better. For myself, and for my neighbors, and for every homeowner who'd ever been bullied by someone abusing a small amount of power. The ice cleats still hang by my door every winter, ready for use. But more than that, they're ready as a reminder that ordinary objects can become extraordinary symbols, that standing up to injustice matters, even when the injustice seems small. That karma is real and sometimes works with poetic precision. And most importantly, that sometimes the best defense against people who try to control others is simply refusing to be controlled, no matter what it costs you. Patricia Hendricks stole my ice cleats from my porch and fell 3 times walking to her own driveway. That's the simple version of the story. But the real story is about what happened after, about reclaiming power from someone who'd abused theirs, about a community coming together to demand better, and about how sometimes the smallest acts of resistance can lead to the biggest changes. My name is Xavier Donovan, and I live in Maple Ridge subdivision in Columbus, Ohio. I have a pair of orange ice cleats that once caused a neighborhood revolution, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat.